Hi, I'm James, one of the directors at 9 Dots Development. Today we're looking at a slightly uncomfortable question. Is your AI strategy being sabotaged? And when I say sabotaged, I don't just mean people openly refusing to use AI. I mean the quiet stuff that's easily missed, such as avoiding using appropriate tools and approved tools, sticking to old habits, undermining results, or just using unapproved AI in the background. The reason we're talking about this issue now is that AI adoption is quickly becoming a trust issue, not a technological issue. Many organisations that we speak to are heavily investing in AI tools, but usage often still remains patchy. Behaviour is inconsistent across departments, and AI is being used in a risky way in the background. Before we get into this into more detail, I just want to give you a bit of context about who I am and what we do. I'm James, one of the directors at 9 Dots, and we're a leadership and digital skills training provider. My personal background, though, is in software development, and at 9 Dots we've spent a lot of time internally rolling out systems, software and internal projects, including our own structured AI rollout this year. So when we talk about internal adoption and change, we're not just talking about it in theory. We've seen firsthand how rollouts can get stuck, what people worry about, and what successful AI adoption actually requires. And what we found is that the core message is simple. If trust breaks down, no amount of tools will produce confident, consistent, safe use. So in this video, we're going to look at 4 things. Why sabotage is often quiet, how fear, trust and confidence drives resistance, why ownership and champions matter, and what needs to happen after the initial launch for adoption to actually stick. As I mentioned, the main problem that organisations often miss, and the reason that sabotage often goes undetected, is that sabotage isn't usually loud or overtly obvious. It's often quiet, and quiet is exactly what makes it dangerous. Monday.com recently shared a statistic that every leader should pay attention to. 29% of workers admit that they have actively sabotaged their company's AI strategy, and for Gen Z workers that figure rises to 44%. And that's just the workers who are willing to openly admit it. So in reality, the statistic is likely to be much higher. This doesn't mean that you need to go and panic or assume that your team actually wants to harm your organisation. The point is being able to notice what resistance actually looks like, because it often shows up as quiet, seemingly rational looking behaviours that are easy to overlook day to day. Things like staff saying, "I forgot," but then they seem to only forget when it's an AI process, or they say, "It didn't work," because they used AI poorly, then used the output as proof that it's useless. Or they say, "I'm too busy," so they keep doing things the old way. And then there's shadow AI. Shadow AI is where people are using AI, but not the approved tool. They're using a different tool because it feels faster to them, easier or less visible. And this usage undermines your policies. It means that they may be using unsafe tools without you actually knowing that your company's data is at higher risk of security breaches and data leaks. The risk is that sabotage usually starts as uncertainty and avoidance, but if you don't spot it early, this can become company culture. The organisations that catch this early are the ones that treat adoption as an ongoing behavioural challenge, not just as a one-time technological outlay. So if you want to prevent AI sabotage, the first step to understand is why people are doing this in the first place. This is why we always say that AI adoption and digital rollouts are people challenges, not just a tech challenge. Even the best tools will fail if people don't trust them, understand them, or know how to apply them in their day-to-day work. And this is why we identified the need to formally roll out AI here at 9 Dots. Our staff were starting to use AI more, but there wasn't yet formal policy or guidance, and this is exactly the condition where risk grows. The result is often avoidance, workarounds, or fake adoption, which is where it looks like people are complying because they're not saying anything particularly bad about AI, but the behaviour has not actually changed, they're just staying quiet. So if I asked you today where AI is being used in your organisation and where it's being avoided or done quietly, would you genuinely know the answer? And this is a challenge that a lot of organisations we speak to are currently facing. And it's important to remember here that the most AI resistance is not about because people hate technology, it's because AI changes the psychological contract at work. It changes how people feel about their role. When we rolled out AI at 9 Dots, we found that resistance usually came back to 3 things: fear, trust, and confidence. And these 3 forces shapes whether adoption sticks or whether it quietly unravels. The first driver that I mentioned is fear. People associate AI with job loss, so they avoid it, they undermine it, or they try to prove that it doesn't work, because adopting AI to them can feel a bit like self-sabotage. The second driver is trust, and I don't just mean trust in the AI tool itself, I mean trust in the leadership intent. People worry about things like monitoring, how this will affect their performance reviews, and goalposts moving as a result of AI making their work more efficient. The third driver is confidence, and a lot of people simply just don't know how to use AI in real workflows. So when they are unsure, they default back to familiar habits, and that is the path of least resistance. And there's an important nuance here. AI avoidance and shadow AI are both forms of resistance. Some people avoid AI completely, whilst others use unapproved tools quietly, but both create risk. And this is where leaders often get caught out. They confuse their rollout with overall adoption. A rollout may mean that software has been purchased, licenses have been assigned, a pilot's been run with a handful of teams, policy documents have been written, been shared, and there's been a one-size-fits-all training session. But none of that guarantees confident day-to-day use in day-to-day roles. Real long-term adoption requires something more. It requires finding out what your staff's concerns are before any training even begins, and understanding their current confidence levels, not just whether they have access to the tools. It requires addressing specific worries, including the ones that you didn't actually predict in the first place. And you have to reinforce that changed behaviour over time, and not just as a one-off in a one-off training session. When we rolled out AI at 9dots, we ran a staff survey as the very first step. This was before writing any policies or organising any training sessions. We didn't do this just to tick a box. We did it to understand the confidence levels, staff concerns and current usage of AI. And I'm very glad we did do this because it highlighted things that we may not have known otherwise. For example, it showed us that one of the main concerns among our staff was the environmental impact of AI. Having this insight meant that we could really embed this into our training policies and address this in the sessions. And this is the whole point. If you don't surface and address concerns early, you don't remove the reasons why people would resist. You actually just brush them under the carpet. Whereas in our case, when we address the environmental impact of AI head on, we were able to reassure staff, and it actually built quite a lot of trust. So if fear, trust and confidence are what drives resistance, the next question is what actually makes the difference in practice. And this is where ownership and governance really matters. If AI adoption depends on one AI person pushing it uphill informally, your strategy is going to be really fragile. There are 4 things I'd look for in any credible AI rollout or digital rollout. The first are clear owners. Who is accountable for adoption? Spotting the opportunities, supporting staff, not informally, not assumed, but actually named individuals. The second thing that any rollout needs is clear guardrails. What tools are approved? What data can or cannot be inputted? What are the do's and don'ts? Are they written in plain English? Are they overly technical? Are they written in confusing language? The third is practical enablement. That means role-based training that is tied to real workflows, not just generic demos that don't connect how people are actually going to work. And the fourth is measurement. So they're not just usage numbers, but measured confidence, consistency, and knowing where AI is genuinely helping or creating risk. If these 4 things are neglected, you'll create the conditions for sabotage to happen. We've found both internally and working with clients that having internal AI champions creates a bridge between policy and behaviour. In our structure at 9dots, we've got a data controller, AI champions and AI ambassadors. The data controller is accountable for data governance, policies, GDPR and compliance. Our champions drive adoption across the organisation, spot opportunities to implement AI and automation, implement workflows and encourage safe and responsible use of AI. And then we've got several AI ambassadors who act as the first port of call for staff if they've got any questions about AI. This structure has worked really well for us, and it's meant that staff have got all the support that they need, AI is being used safely, and we're seeing real efficiencies with the new AI workflows. We also produced clear policies and made sure that they covered all the concerns that were raised in the initial staff survey. That included things like data privacy and what AI tools can and cannot be used. Having this structure and governance in place is how you remove fear, promote trust, and build staff's confidence. After the initial launch, there's one final trap a lot of organisations fall into. What happens after the rollout? That trap is familiar. Training takes place, everybody seems happy, policies and emails go out, staff are given access to all the AI tools, and then the organisation then moves on. And that's when quiet resistance starts to creep back in. Without reinforcement, early enthusiasm fades and usage drops. Instead of using the new tools and workflows, people come up with workarounds. And even though knowledge and skills can increase quickly after training, behaviour moves slowly. And that's not failure by any means, that's just reality. And as a training provider, we've always seen that it takes longer for people's behaviour to change. And without reinforcement, they can become stagnant. So the real question is not whether people attended the training, it's whether usage remains high, new workflows are used, and behaviour is actually changing. So what does staying embedded actually mean? It means you build an adoption rhythm. At 9 Dots, we use scorecards to track movements across knowledge, skills and behaviours. We also sent out a 3-month follow-up survey to our staff, which provided a clearer view of their confidence and what support they needed. Without these scorecards and surveys, we would really have been left in the dark. If you don't measure and reinforce, you're literally left guessing. And guessing is how quiet resistance becomes a cultural problem. The rhythm here is pretty simple. So you check in, so ask about usage, confidence and concerns regularly. Learn, so identify what is working and where friction remains. Fix, address unclear guidance, update training and close gaps. Then reinforce, so celebrate good practice and embed it into workflow. And that is how adoption becomes structure rather than relying on luck. So is your AI strategy being sabotaged? And for many organisations, the answer to this is going to be yes. The uncomfortable truth for leaders is that if your rollout consists of just giving people access to tools and generic training sessions, you're leaving a lot to chance. The organisations that roll out AI well are going to be those who treat AI adoption as a capability and behaviour change. They put clear guardrails in place, they deliver role-based training, and they create ongoing rhythm. So my final question to you is this: do you have a formal structure in place to prevent your AI strategy from being sabotaged?